This is Jocelyn.
Hey, Jocelyn, this is Dr. Dorenzo. Welcome to the Dr. Dorenzo Show. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for being willing to do this. This is so wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you calling from?
I live just south of Denver in Colorado.
Okay, wonderful. I'm sure it's a little chilly there too
It
these
is.
days.
It is a little chilly. Yeah, it's like 28 degrees right
Ooh,
now. So
ooh.
yeah, it's a little
Okay.
cold.
Well, we're in North Florida, so but it's about 50.
Oh,
So, but it's
okay.
good.
Well.
But it's good. So what I wanted to do is have you. I know that you have reached out to me on Instagram and kind of gave me some background about the situation with your husband.
hmm
Can you, because the viewers don't know the story, can you kind of run through
Sure.
it with me in detail?
Yeah. So I was married when I was young. I mean, I guess that's relative. Like 25, 26. To a man who was in the military. We had a good relationship, and then he suffered some PTSD and some other things, and we just unfortunately couldn't reconcile things. He was just going in a much different direction than I wanted to go. We
Okay.
did have a son together, and so when we were going through our divorce, I actually met a man who I'm married to now, and we moved pretty quickly. Moved in together after about 3.5 months, and proceeded to get engaged about 6 months after that.
Okay.
Got married about 9 months after that.
Wow.
Got pregnant about 2 months after that.
Moving
so
fast. Sure.
moving fast, and it just there were things, and don't get me wrong, he's a very good person.
Sure.
He's a wonderful father. But there were things that were happening that I didn't really recognize as, like, I guess you would call it a red flag, like terms that I've now come to be familiar with, like love bombing.
Okay.
There was a lot of extravagant dates and gift giving. And when we bought our house, it was outside of my comfort zone from a financial aspect, but he's got it. It's all good. And not too long after we moved in together and got engaged, things started to sort of just kind of like fade, and I felt very unseen. There was a lot of like distraction on his end. Just coming home, getting on Instagram, listening to his music, doing his own thing, and I became really unhappy. And I expressed this multiple times around, hey, I feel like you're just not very present. And it was met with defensiveness. And I even made a comment at one point about, I feel like we're more like roommates.
Sure.
And, it was just, again, met with kind of a defensive comment. So I just sort of stopped saying things and kind of fell into a depression, and ended up seeing a therapist on my own. And she helped me recognize, just kind of like some of those feelings that I was having. So I took him with me to my therapist to just basically so that I wouldn't chicken out.
Sure.
And I could express all of this to him. He was not happy. I mean, he listened, but felt that he had been attacked, and just sort of, it was an embarrassing situation for him.
Why did he think he was there with you?
I mean, I told him, he had asked me multiple times, how's therapy going? Do you want to talk about it? And I just didn't feel like I was ready to do that.
Okay.
I typically, like historically, I've been very much a people pleaser, and I don't do well with conflict. So I tend to just kind of, everything's fine. We'll just, sweep it under the rug, because I just don't like that. And,
okay. And
so
how long had you guys been married at the time when it went from like hot to cold, and then all of a sudden you're in a therapist's office?
Well, it probably had been about a year. My daughter had been born at this, or our daughter had been born at this point. And, it was very much like things were happening. Like I would say, or I would be playing with my daughter, and he was distracted doing something else, and then would intermittently just say, oh, you guys having fun? Trying to interject. And I'm like, well, why don't you come engage with us instead of just trying to check a box? That's how it felt to me. Or I would walk through the room with laundry, and he'd go, I love you. And then I'd walk through 2 minutes later, I love you, and I'm like, I love you too. But it just didn't ever feel, there was a major lack of genuineness to it.
Or he didn't know what to do.
Or he didn't know what to do. And so it was about a year, and he and I had a big conversation after we met with my therapist, and he said he was going to make a lot of changes and really focus on family and, cancel his Instagram and all this other stuff. And he did do all that. I didn't ask him to do that necessarily. The genuine factor for me is something that's really important. And I just felt that it was very much lacking.
Yeah.
And so things were better for a little while, and it didn't get worse, but it didn't get better, and it changed. It's like, and when I say that, I mean, it was like he was trying so hard that, again, it just didn't feel genuine. Like, he had gotten to the point where he would compliment me over and over and over again. And I tried to talk to him about it and say, what, you can just say good morning. You don't have to tell me that I'm hot 30 times before 9 a.m. I mean, that's very nice.
Sure.
But it's just a lot.
But it came with no action, right? Is that what you mean? Like, it was just it's just words, just like placating you along the way.
And it just didn't feel like, I'm glad that you're attracted to me. That's wonderful. But it just felt, I don't know. And I started to notice like some tendencies just sort of, and I wouldn't say he's a narcissistic person, but he definitely has some narcissistic characteristics. And I mean, since then we started seeing our own therapists, because over the summer, I just was really unhappy. I felt very anxious around him. I just didn't feel, it just wasn't a good feeling.
Yeah. So was this like near the final blow up with your mom? Is that?
Well, no, that was more recent. But we had a thing over the summer. We were supposed to go to Europe together. And a couple days before that, I just didn't feel like I could go to Europe with this person who I just didn't even really want to be around.
Yeah.
And so I told him how I was feeling, and we ended up separating for about a month. And he found a therapist, and since then we've been going to see him, and it's been very helpful. But it's very clear to me that we're there to work on resolution of our issues as a couple, and it's not going to ever be focused on hey, maybe these are some of the things that you need to work on. And so what happened more recently is one of the common themes, and it's not like super consistent, but one of the common things that's happened is he's a very emotional person, and so he just reacts in a situation however he's feeling, regardless of how, and this is something that I've really addressed with him, and he's said that he's really working on it. But in this last instance, he became very upset. My daughter was hurt because she found an old can of pepper spray in my car, which obviously I felt horrible about, and ended up touching her eyes. And instead of kind of coming from a team perspective, it was more of like how could you do this? What's wrong with you? Very accusatory. And I became very upset. Yeah. And when we were getting ready to go to the hospital, I was really upset, and I started crying, and my mom said, this is not your fault. And I just said, yeah, it is, Mom. It's my fault. And I was really upset. And I said, and he knows it too. And he came out, and my mom, in a defensive manner, said, don't yell at her. She's really upset right now. Okay. And then in turn, he yelled at her, said some unkind words. Yeah. and I mean, we've talked about this in therapy a couple times now, and I understand his perspective. I just, I'm kind of at a point where it's hard because he feels like I don't like him. Sure. He's expressed that to me multiple times, and I've told him, like, it's not that I don't like you. I just don't like the way that you interact with me on certain occasions. Sure. And the I guess you could call it love bombing. I don't know. I mean, just the constant compliments. Yeah. I mean, and I addressed it with him over the weekend. I said, because I mean, I'll give you an example. We're standing in my son's doorway in the morning, and he's like, you're just so hot. What is it like to be so hot? And he's standing 5 inches from my face. And I said, well, thank you. Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah. And he's just standing there looking at me. And I said, okay, now you can be done with the compliment. Like, just give me a compliment and move on. And he said, well, I think you're over, what did he say? You're over criticizing the situation. I think you just are too negative about things, and maybe you're too critical. And I said, but I feel uncomfortable. And he said, well, maybe I don't think that's always the right way to feel. And I said, my feelings are not right? And he said, yeah, not always.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
so
what?
it almost like in terms of love bombing, it almost seems like he's not necessarily love bombing you. It's just, and I don't know him, right? So I'm kind of,
Right.
making an estimation, but it sounds like very immature and not really knowing what to do or how to communicate with you, right? He's
Yeah.
an avoider of conflict, and that's all he knows what to do to placate you. So, but it kind of, it sounds immature. How old is he now?
He'll be 45 next year.
Yeah, I mean, so has he had another long-term relationship before you? Was he married before?
He was engaged twice, but never married.
Okay. Do you know why those ended, those two engagements?
The first one, I think he was just really young, and she was from another country, and it just, I don't know if it was a cultural difference, but he's said on multiple occasions, his friends were like, she's the most beautiful woman that you're ever going to find. You got to lock this down. She's so beautiful. She's so beautiful. I mean, he's told me on multiple occasions how attractive this woman was. And then the second one, again, she was very like family oriented, very beautiful. And then I guess there was like some issues with, she was drinking too much, and then she had cats apparently that he's very allergic to, and he had tried to like make it work. So I don't really know what happened with that one, but again, I think her family said you guys can't live together unless you're engaged, and so I think it was a pretty quick engagement.
Sure.
And so so I think I don't know like all the details of it, but I do know that I think things move pretty quickly in both of those situations.
Okay. So is there anything positive in the relationship too? Like, are you seeing any positive things, or are you feeling all negative too about most?
I mean, that's a hard question. My sister's asked me that, because she said, it's hard because if you're not happy, how long are you going to do this? And it's not fair to him to keep dragging this out if you're not happy. And it's hard because when I look at him, most of the time, he's not doing these things. He is pretty, I hate to use the word normal, but he's pretty normal, and he's trying to be a partner and helping with the kids and doing all this other stuff. So it's not like he's not trying, but I have a hard time, even when he does want to touch me or compliment me or just have like a normal conversation. A lot of times I struggle with that, and I do feel kind of anxious around him, and I know that he's trying, and he's definitely better than he was. And I think some of these are kind of old feelings of just feeling not comfortable. I mean, I told him I was watching a show in the living room a couple months ago, and he was in his office doing like listening to music, and he came out and said like, "Oh, what are you watching?" And I told him what I was watching, and he said, "Oh, do you like this show?" And I said, well, yeah, I'm watching it. So, And he crossed his arms and kind of shook his head and laughed and goes, I think this is the dumbest, most overrated show on television. Yeah. And I brought it up to him later, and I said, you do those kinds of things to me regularly. Do you think that I'm ever going to watch that show in front of you again? Ever? Yeah. Or do you think I can really be myself around you when I feel like you're constantly, judging me or I don't know, just making comments. So I think that I think that there are really good things about the relationship. I think I'm just kind of, I mean, you're very negative about it. It's almost like there's we have once the negative bias sets in, we start maximizing all the negativity, right? And minimizing any good. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing about you. And then, I mean, there is an age difference too, right? I mean, he is older than you. I mean, he's older than me. He's like 5 years older than me. It's not that big of an age difference, but yeah, it's a little bit of an age difference. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you want to do? That's a really good question. And I'm not, we're actively going to see this therapist. But what is the goal in therapy? Like, are you guys trying to salvage this? Are you trying to reduce all the negativity and rebuild a connection and trust? I mean, that's the goal. Like, I think there's part of me that does, I'm not sure exactly what I want. I'm not sure if maybe I'm so closed off to the idea of things working out that maybe I'm sabotaging it.
I mean, sounds like you are, it's kind of, you even feeding off of his negativity, and you guys are just, spiraling down. I mean, the problem is there, in a relationship, that is already negative. It's like, we talk about like the quicksand that you can't escape from, right? At least one of you will pull each other down into it, and it sounds like you guys are stuck in that. So, are you guys, were you best friends before, when you were together in the beginning? Was it that intense?
No, and I think again, that's part of my problem, that I, kind of resent him a little bit for that. Like, I felt like we had a lot in common with things like our political views, and the family was really important to us and things like that. But I mean, when you talk about like what we have in common as far as just like spending time together, it's not like, it's just, sometimes I'm like, I would just love to be able to come home and like be with my best friend. I don't feel like I can talk to him about things sometimes, because it's just met with kind of this, like, all these questions and all this judgment. I mean, my stepmom had said, and she didn't tell me this until later, but she's like, oh yeah, the first time I met him, I felt like I was in a job interview. He just asks questions and questions and questions and questions. And I mean, even to the point where last night, my son, I was doing spelling words with him. My son is autistic. So, there's that aspect of coming into a relationship with a child that has special needs. But, it's taken him a long time to kind of understand what that means. But, he kind of acted out. And at the end, he said, well, how was homework? And I didn't say anything about that, because I just don't feel like I can just say to him, well, he was kind of acting out, but it's all good. We took care of it, and then just move on. It's like, well, what did you do about it? Well, what did you tell to him? Well, what did you, and I'm just like, he acted out. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I handled it. He was just doing this. Well, maybe you need to tell him he needs to focus more. It's like, he's autistic with ADHD. Tell him he needs to focus more. Like, what?
Right. He's not necessarily capable of that or understanding what you mean. Your son or your husband. So I mean, it sounds like you're lukewarm kind of about the whole relationship and about what you should do. And that is certainly problematic. I just wonder, you got to make a decision, right? And you got to be 100% either way, because once you make a decision, it's gonna go either way, right? I mean, you can't half work a relationship. Right, you got to be all in, because it's so easy for either one of you to pull each other back into the trap.
And I think my fear with that is just, I feel like if I put myself 100% in, first of all, I don't totally know what that looks like, and second of all, I'm just afraid, like, if I'm still not feeling this in 6 months, like, what do I do?
Yeah. But Jocelyn, but then right? If you're not, I mean, you got to give 100. You got to give 100%. There's no way it's going to work if you don't. So you at least try, and if it doesn't, give yourself a time frame, and if it doesn't, then it's time to make another decision.
Yeah.
So, but half working on this, or even at 75%, it's just so hard, because as soon as you guys are in conflict, if you're not committed to resolving the overarching issues, it's so easy to slide back. So, and it takes two people making repairs, two people moving toward each other when there's conflict, and two people influencing each other. When you're saying, I need you to be different, I need you to do something differently, he's got to be willing to do it. Just like he's got to make requests of you. And it sounds like he's not really making requests of you other than don't be so judgmental. But I do hear the judgment in your voice, with him, because it sounds like, I mean, you are negative, but I know that comes from somewhere. And I hear that you guys have different values too, it's really making it difficult to move forward.
Well, yeah, and I think like, I do struggle with some of that stuff, and I know that I'm negative, and I mean, I appreciate your your honesty, because it's it's hard, because with the instance with my mom, I mean, he sat there and said, she attacked me, and I've never been so disrespected in all of my life. And I was like, what? it's hard. It's really hard for me to unhear things
I
that
know.
have been said.
I know, but
Um,
I mean, I get that, but I want you to be understanding his perspective and finding out where he comes from and why did he react that way. You got to put it in context because it sounds
yeah.
like, I mean, there's not this history of him being abusive or cruel or verbally assaulting your mother, right? I mean, you guys
No,
have this
that's
building
no.
tension. You guys have this building tension, and your poor mom is caught in the crossfire. That's
No, yeah,
not.
this is the first time, and I apologized to him because I said, look, I think the reason my mom got more involved than she normally would have is because she's heard from me for the last 2 years,
Yeah.
just negative things, and I've told her about when you do get angry, and I mean, he said things like, you're just a negative person. You're just a negative person. I mean, he yelled at me a few weeks ago and was like, you're
Sure.
so effed up. You're so effed up. I mean, on our honeymoon, he yelled at me and said he questions my level of intelligence.
Yeah.
There's
I
been
know.
things that have been said, and over the years, I've said those things to my mom, and so I
Yeah.
think she was just kind of like,
She was
okay,
she was defending you and supporting you and and protecting your daughter too, right? I mean, regarding the pepper
yeah,
spray and his behavior. So I mean, it's sad, it's tough in the beginning, for a relationship. It's kind of been lukewarm. I mean, from the beginning, and it sounds like there's been problems, challenges from the beginning. I mean, it was so hot and then it got cold, right? And you guys
mm-hmm.
have been struggling ever since. So, you really need to spend some time with him though and make a decision with that therapist. Like, you guys need to decide what you're actually doing. Are you moving forward or not?
Yeah.
So, but you got to give it 100% if you decide to work on this.
So I
Okay.
mean, when he does things like he says, makes all these comments about, you're just so beautiful, like you're so hot, like you're
Sure.
just so,
Yeah.
it makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm supposed to just,
We'll just say, he values physical beauty, and it may be his way of trying to connect with you.
yeah,
So you tell him you thank you, and you tell him he's handsome, and you see what his response is, and you look at him. You slow down and you face him in those moments, and see what comes next, because
okay,
that's his way of being vulnerable and trying to connect with you. I mean, that's what I'm estimating here. So,
yeah,
but bottom line
okay,
is, you got to make a decision.
yeah,
You got to make a
okay,
decision, and if you do, you can't be half-assing this. You got to give it
mm-hmm.
100%, because you are, and you really got to focus on, we call it the fundamental attribution error in psychology, and it's the error we make regarding the intent of somebody's behavior. When we feel good about a relationship and our partner does something right, it's because of some internal trait, and when they do something wrong, we give it an excuse or some situational reason. But when the relationship is not going well, when our partner does something wrong, we see that as an internal trait, and when they do something great, we explain it away. So, the truth is, we do things because of who we are and situations. So you really need to be a little more balanced and give him some grace and
Mm-hmm.
understand where he's coming from. Especially if you decide to give this a whirl and try to make it work, you got to give it 100%. Okay.
Okay,
Jocelyn, forgive me. I have to. I have
for
to.
what?
I have to go.
Oh no, you're
I gotta. I
fine.
gotta wind this up. So,
Yep,
but
no
I.
worries.
But
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Please keep us up to date and let us know we can do this again in the future,
Okay,
and give us an update.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Give it 100% either way.
Okay, I
All
will.
right.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay.